Welcome back. We're getting so much feedback on this topic, governance and the church. And of course, we're saying today, can the church speak with authority about issues affecting them? About issues affecting you as Kenyans, if they're having issues within their own backyard as well. Is it time for churches to relook at their mandate? What was the vision of the founder and what is the vision now? Is it time, some are saying, for us to look at how the church was run in the 1980s when money, tithe, etc. was not the focus, but social justice? Well, some of you are responding already on that. 22422 is our SMS line. Hashtag Daybreak. This is what some of you have to say right now.
Now let's bring them up and see. Bernard Nyangondi from Mombasa says, SDA has been a pillar of faith that every Christian denomination envied, but immediately it started having issues that are not anchored in the biblical teaching, but imitation to satisfy selfish interests, such as the mandatory Pastor's Appreciation Day and inviting politicians to fundraise on Sabbath. It lost moral and spiritual position.
All right, that's the views of one, adherent of the SDA Church. I'm sure there are others who would say something different, but these are some of your views. Another SMS here. We have, you don't give us any, but say church is not losing its direction. We can only see those separations triggered by failure to follow the word of God and church constitution. And again, we are still on earth, not in heaven, where there are no wrangles. There are no wrangles in heaven. How can a follower of Christ say that they are ready to take the bull by its horns? That only tells us that there is more of themselves and not for Christ. That's a reference to the story that we ran
earlier. Yes. Yeah, let's see what else you're saying on SMS. 22422 is the SMS line. Keep the feedback coming. You don't leave a name. Kindly leave a name and where you're texting from. You say the church is in bed with the world. Indeed, she is today more worldly than never before. I have a doctorate in Christian philosophy, and the truth is that the church needs surgical reformation. God is grieved by such leaders.
Okay, Reverend Dr. Lydia Mwaneki, your thoughts. First of all, do you think the viewers are being fair to the church? Do you think they're being too general? How would you respond to that? And of course, also talk to us about the system as well.
I have mixed feelings or mixed reactions to that. You know, Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if somebody has chosen to be a Christian or a follower of Christ, they must first of all abide with Christ's teaching. Yesterday, today, and going forward, there is no way that Jesus will change and say now the church should be worldly. No, that is deviation. And so if the church is corrupt today, are we talking about the church in general or a few individuals? You know, the problem is that the negative things are the ones that are more highlighted in every case more than others. Like the Bible has a few passages that create gender disparities, but there are more passages that are life-affirming, that are life-giving for women. But those that are highlighted are the negative things.
So you hear that out there, that some sections of the Bible are, what, unfair to women?
Yes, please, yes.
Okay, you get that a lot from people that you interact with?
Yes, just the few passages, the way they have been taken up, the way they have been appropriated, they have been used in a way that denies women leadership positions in the church. So even today, if a few people are corrupt or have lost their way, it is not good to generalize and say that the church has lost its moral authority unless if Jesus is not on the throne. What we need to do is to look into ourselves, and especially leaders. Many churches have structures, but for those structures to work properly, there must be proper leadership. If the leadership up there is right, then everybody else will struggle. If the leader is struggling or is striving to reflect Christ in all they say and do, then the church will follow. So it must begin with the leaders to preach transformation, and then the Christians should see that transformation in the leadership and follow suit.
Okay. And Dr. Bright, I'm still stuck on this issue of church speaking in one voice, because there are several of them. There's the All Africa Conference of Churches, like the one you're saying, where you're training people and making sure that they are better leaders. Then there's the NCCK. People have their own issues. How do you ensure that the church merges their vision and also the repercussions of this training? Because even if you do the training and then you realize one of the people you've trained are not exactly adhering to the training, what are the repercussions? How do you handle that?
Well, there's a limitation as to what we can do in terms of regulating the church, because there is freedom of worship, there's freedom of association. So the NCCK can bring together its members. The All Africa Conference of Churches can do the same, and applies to other councils of churches in the continent. But then it is left to the individual churches, because we only give guidance, but we do not make rules for those individual churches and councils. So we can only give guidance, but we cannot actually make rules for the individual churches in the individual countries where they come from. But I will also add that there is a need for the church for a kind of introspection, to re-examine themselves and see what they do in relation to what is happening in the secular world. So, like the issue of management, when Moses was trying to do everything in the Bible, his father-in-law, Jethro, told him and said, Moses, why are you trying to do everything yourself?
Delegate.
Divide, delegate your work, so that this person will do this, we cannot do everything. That is the introspection that the church leadership today has to look at, because if you have a church of say 100 people, 200 people, yes, you can manage. But where the church has grown to have branches all over the country, yes, then you must bring in some of these management skills that we even find in the Bible.
Yeah.
You see, to guide in the leadership of the church. So there must be that kind of balance. That is the point actually we bring to focus when we bring church leaders to Wayaki Way to
train them. Any concerns about two things, and I also want Christine to weigh in on this. One, the idea of career pastors. You know, when you look at the Bible and the apostles, they did not get into it with a goal in mind that in the 5 years, this is the growth I see, etc. But one gets the feeling now that for a lot of young pastors who get into the ministry, and those are the leaders of the churches of the next 10 or 20 years, they are very ambitious. They are willing to go to school to study because hopefully it will guarantee them promotion, and they have a goal in mind possibly to lead that church. And one wonders if they are willing to do anything to get to that position. A second group is the feeling that churches are really involved in investment right now, and some of the investments do very well in the hotel industry, in schools, in hospitals, and at the end of the day you find that church suddenly has a bank balance of 1 billion Kenya shillings, and there was no preparation for that. Some say that is where churches are going wrong. How do you respond to that?
No, it is wrong. It is wrong. I think the error comes in where mostly the business enterprises of churches, they are means to an end, to support the mission and the programmatic work of the church. So
the money should be channeled to those things.
Exactly. So that when the money is, the surplus that is derived, if it is plowed back into supporting the mission work of the church, there is nothing wrong with the church going into business. But I think that the mistake comes in if it is only focusing, if the greater effort is focused in just money generation. But what I know is that most of the churches that are engaged in businesses, the profits that is derived from their business operations go back to support the mission work of the church, to do evangelism, to pay the salaries of pastors in mission areas. So I do not still subscribe to the view by people that because the church is doing business, it has lost its course. No. That would be the case if the focus is only on business.
Purely money generation.
Purely money, yeah. But in all Africa Conference of Churches, we have what we call the strategic business unit. But the money that we derive from our operations comes to support the mission work the main programmatic work of the All Africa Conference of Churches. And I know that of the ACK, I know that of the Methodist Church, I know that of the Presbyterian Church, all in this country and all over the continent.
Okay, with that focus in mind. Christine, come in and your thoughts on these trends that some say are the reason why the church is experiencing these issues.
I want to talk about what you said, the career pastors situation, and also the church development projects being the major, the major activity, you would say, of many churches. I think this is, I'm the kind of person who always wants to contextualize and to historicize things, because the fact that we are experiencing it now doesn't mean that this is the first time it's happening, or it doesn't mean that we are not able to trace the roots of where this thing comes from. And I think part of it, a big part of it in my view, is that market thinking, the logic of the market, has taken over the church spaces, just as it has for government, for business, for all these things. That we think of the church and its mission as a kind of market activity, right? Where we see people who don't go to our church as an untapped market, right? Where we need to reach them, and if you're, and career pastors are basically responding to the demand for like human capital. We say like you should build your brand, it's market thinking. And you need the numbers. It's market logic. It's neoliberalism basically, right? And neoliberalism basically tells us that everything will respond to market forces if you just, treat it like a market basically, right? So when pastors are joining the ministry for career goals, this is just very much in line with those logics. And it also does something else to like the whole mission of the church. I was talking earlier about the difference between like, ambition and influence and justice. Those are two different things, right? Neoliberalism does something to church spaces. It makes us focus on development projects as a sign of growth, just like the way it would for a business. A business grows by putting up more buildings, a school grows by enrolling more children. And the other focus that it makes us look at is personal discipline. We become very individualistic about what faith means. It's a personal thing, right? So now we have these private solutions to what are public problems, right? And our church spaces are no longer involved in any kind of political organizing or even critical resistance to structures of injustice. And if you look at Acts 2, the first thing that happened after the believers received the Holy Spirit, the first thing that happened after that is that they sold their belongings and shared to everyone who was in need. In short, they reorganized society. There was something public and social about their faith. Right? It wasn't just a personal infilling with the Holy Spirit, and now they were okay, and they were out there going to reach this untapped market in Jerusalem.
Interesting perspective, the private solutions to public
but
problems.
I wanted to say one thing. He said, how will the church fund its activities? How do you expect, and I think his logic is, rather than pressuring congregants every Sunday to raise money for A, B, C, which has become the crowd there. Sometimes you hear preachers overseas and even here saying, my husband has a birthday, my wife has a birthday, we need to do this or that for them. Why doesn't the church then just have well-ordered investments that can take the pressure off their congregants? Is there really anything wrong with that?
So that's market logic, like I'm saying, that you need money so that you can do church. But what are church activities? It's reaching the untapped market, right? This is circular reasoning. You're in a box.
Which is a great commission, I believe.
I don't believe that it is. I truly believe that we are called to something more, something deeper, something more public, something that is more in contact with the injustice of the day, rather than being in this box of like, investments into missions, into investments.
Some of those missions are actually good. So they're paying for some orphans. They're also paying school fees.
But the question is, how did people get orphaned? Why are they without schools? Why aren't we asking the questions of
but that's
how
because
people...
they're bridging the gap of failures of other institutions.
This is what I mean by like private solutions to public problems. The fact that there are no schools and no hospitals is a public problem.
Shouldn't then the church come in and try and bridge that
She's saying
gap?
the church
So this is let me just conclude by saying, you know the story of the Good Samaritan, where there was a man who was attacked on the way to Jerusalem, and someone came and helped him out, right? And that's where the story ends for most of us, right? That there's a person who comes in to save the day, like you're saying, which is something I applaud. But there's another mission of the church where we ask the question, why is that road dangerous? Why is it dangerous to move from Jerusalem to Jericho? Has it something to do with the design of the road? Are there blind spots? Should we fix the road so that people don't get accosted on this road?
So that there's no need to save that.
Exactly. Like preventing evil is also as valuable as coming in to save people who have been caught on the underside of evil structures.
We have to take a quick break, and there's a lot of feedback coming through, trying to squeeze them in, but I'd like to get what Apostle's view on this. And one of the biggest concerns some people say, like splinter groups, you're the founder of the Will of God of church, for example, the people say those are just business ventures. You simply separate from a bigger split, you become a splinter group because you want to make money.
No, I'm not separated from a splinter group. I am just, it's by faith. You are called by God, and then he gives you the vision, the direction, which way to go. And to answer this, I concur with my sister very well, because faith is not private. Faith is all about witnessing, taking Jesus out there. Then how do we take him? How do we take him? That's where now the system comes in. He is the head. Then he raised the under according to the gifts. And I think that is the video of the church. Because as much as they are, we are training them, do we know which gifts they have? As much as the young people want to come to the gospel, maybe for money, maybe for career, do we ask God, is this one called in this area? Maybe he's a media personality, and then we bring him in the gospel. Maybe even our Bible schools, when they come there, they want to be trained as pastors. Do we know whether their calling is pastoral? Do you know whether their calling is evangelical? Do you know whether their calling is maybe prophecy? Do we discern that? And how can we know this one is called in this area? This is where now the first church, the apostolic church, you see, even when they wanted to replace Judas, they prayed and God spoke. When they wanted to send, when God wanted to send Paul and Barnabas, they prayed and asked God. And the Spirit of God spoke and said, separate from me Barnabas and Saul. I have a special work for them. Okay. So what from where I am, what I see wrong is not involving God in his work. Okay. As much as we are doing good, maybe Good Samaritan work, we are building schools, for who? As much as we should cater for the church, we should know we can never be able to cater for the people of God without him. Because whose glory will it be? We don't want to take the glory of God because he says he's a jealous God. So we have to make sure it comes from him so that the glory may go back to him. That's the only difference that we have. Who is giving the direction to the church?
We have to take a quick break now, but we have a lot of feedback coming through. When we come back from the break, I'd like to hear from Reverend Dr. Lydia Moniki, whether she's concerned with the moral breakdown of the society today, the way disputes are being handled, because she handles the gender, women and youth angle. And those are the
issues that are affecting this very crucial section.
Is she concerned about that? But first, let's see what you're saying online, because there's a lot of it coming through. Let's read them really fast, see if we can
Matters
get
of
them.
faith, it seems, are very close to the hearts of Kenyans.
Yep, let's bring them up. The first one, GNVS governor, I believe. He says the church lost its morality when preachers started engaging in politics, but I believe there are remnants that are on God's side.
Okay. M. Mwaura, no relation to me. The church institution was not created for God. The gospel was not brought to Africa for liberation. It's the longest, running manipulation mechanism in the world. Data is the new church. Do not expect morality from the church.
Oh, wow.
That data in church, I wouldn't know how to put those two together.
Stephen, Mailu Stephen, you say church long lost its allure the moment these pastors started peddling prosperity gospel to take advantage of the poor by fleecing them.
Okay, Harmony Guide. The church has become the home of corruption and the government refuses to hold the lawbreakers accountable. Do better. Wow, the messages, very
Joya,
direction.
WM says, don't be polite with the church. It won't die from you speaking the truth. It's true, the church has just become an arena for political and social advancement, and the clergy don't want to admit it.
Okay, Kipkurui Wesley 7. I'm a member of the NCSDA and strongly believe the church has not lost its authority. The only issue on the table is too much freedom. I think you read this earlier.
And then let's see what Mash Pato says. The people still hold the church as an entity of faith in very high regards. Despite the letdown from the church leaders, people are still able to draw the line.
Okay, an optimistic view there.
Yes.
All right, Dori Ouma, the church space is for making tax-free money. We need to tax them like yesterday. Wow. Okay.
Teddy says the churches have lost it. I can't imagine the leadership of the church fighting for power. Then you expect them to serve the spiritual interest of the congregants. These are people who are keen to amass wealth, period.
All right. Fred Ken Mwangi says, yes, they have. And in doing so, the moral fabric of our nation has been torn to the dogs. I wonder how they build 100 million churches. Well, they can't contribute a penny to a neighboring public school where poor kids study. They even stopped pastoral programs. Okay, I think that's a generalization,
That's general. Some of them still do. And there's a question here. Should the church hold the moral authority in the society to begin with?
We asked, does the church?
Does it hold?
He's asking, should it?
Should it be?
Okay, we'll allow any of our guests to weigh in on that. How many more do we have?
All right, let's run them through as much as we can. Let's get into SMSs
2 SMSs
now.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Matthew Okomoli from Mombasa says, I suggest you talk about a religious bill for all religions. There are so many cults or religions carrying out dubious activities in the country. Kindly also bring this for debate.
Okay, that I can see a lot of resistance. And one last one. We live in a fallen world. Only in heaven is everything done perfectly, the way God intends. That's why we are told to pray, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Our hope in difficult times is not based on positive thinking, wishful thinking, or natural optimism. It's based on God.
All right. Okay, let's take that quick break. When we come back, we get into the moral fabric of the society. Know that the church is concerned of the breakdown. We've seen a lot of domestic violence, femicide, homicide. Everything is just going south, and the church is not speaking. We'll find out next.